Let's get the ball rolling, everyone. Welcome to our very first UX Frontiers conference. We are very happy that you're here today. You made time in your day to come in and share this very first experience with us. If you've been a UX and ATX member, you know that we have been doing this for a while, and now we finally made it to a conference. So thank you so much for sticking with us all this time and seeing this all these months of planning into fruition. We have put together an incredible line of speakers, panelists, and networking opportunities for you. And we just want to make sure that you have a great experience today. And I'm going to pass it on to Cindy so she can also introduce herself and what we're doing today.
Thanks, Andrina. So my name is Cindy Brummer, for those of you that don't know me. And we put together this group way back in 2019. As Andrina said, we've been doing this for a while, and it's been our dream to do a conference. We've been to many conferences, participated in many conferences, but this is our first running it. So thank you for your patience. For those of you that were like, why am I not getting approved? That's all on me. I'm sorry. We locked down security really tight, and I forgot that. So, but thanks so much for joining us. We are going to get started with our first speaker like really shortly, but just to let you know, we are going to be, we have a jam-packed day. And at the end of the day, if you're here, we have some giveaways from our sponsors. So we're going to be doing a random generated uh, giveaway. So somebody in the audience will get some cool swag, and then we'll wrap things up. And we will be sending out a survey because we've learned a lot through the planning process, and we definitely want to learn from you about how we can make this better, because we are for sure going to do this again next year.
Mhm.
All right. So ready to introduce our first speaker, Andrina?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to our sponsors today, Standard Beagle and the Pragmatic Institute. And like Cindy mentioned, we want to make sure that we prevent any trolls, and we ask you all to choose kindness today. We have our code of conduct, and if you want to read more about it, we have a QR code. We have a lot of QR codes today so that we save space on the slide. So if you want to hear more or read more, go ahead and scan this QR code. We also wanted to invite you all to our Slack community. There's also a QR code for that so that you can join us not only in virtual events, but we also run in-person events in the Austin area. And you can see some pictures of our groups and members having some fun together. And lastly, like Cindy mentioned, we do have a giveaway sign up. We're giving away free courses, gift cards, and swag at the very end, but you must be present to win. So that's between 3:30 and 4. And here is the QR code so you can enter those. And yes, let's go ahead and introduce John Rodriguez. Go ahead, Cindy.
All right. Well, everyone, I'm really excited for John to be joining us. He is a product and UX designer, and he's right now a senior product designer at Citibank. So he has been in the product space for 7 years and been really focused on user experience design work for 4 years. He has a master's degree in interaction design from Jefferson University in Philadelphia, and he has a background in engineering and industrial design as well. So he's done so much in all different kinds of industries: sports, VR healthcare, consumer-facing products, and he is recognized as one of ADP List's top 10 impactful mentors, and previously founded an innovation lab as well. So I'm really excited to have him here, especially since he knows so much about this space with AI. As we're learning, we're all learning. So I'm going to turn it over to you, John. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Cindy. Thank you for that awesome introduction. I was so just blown away by the things, everything you said about me. So it was, I always approach things from a place of curiosity and learning. So that led me to the place I am today. So today I'm here to speak about impact of AI and how it impacts product designers and UX designers, even researchers' roles in our workflows and at the workplace and everything. So so Cindy has already spoke about me, but it's everything I had done. She spoke. So I'm John. So I currently work at Citibank, and then so it's been 7 years been in this industry, and it's quite an exciting space where design industry is like constantly shifting. So I kind of find myself always being curious and asking, how does the designer's role fit here when like VR hype came? the AI hype came and everything. It's just constant experiment and exploration that I do. So based on these experiments and exploration I did, that's what I want to share it with you all. It's just not I grabbed from the internet and put it out there. It's like my explorations and curiosities and my experiments and what I learned from it and how designers can use it is something that I am sharing with you all today. So just a higher level overview of the presentation, what we are going through today is about talking a little bit about ChatGPT, because we'll use that as a way to see how we can leverage that in an existing workflow and how it impacts a role. This is going to be like an example. Now, various language learning models or LLMs have come, like Bard AI and everything, but ChatGPT has been one of the most prominent and the popular one. We'll understand how it impact our roles and workflows. I know there's also a lot of fear that you see like the AI generating all these images and text, and it kind of creates fear also. We'll speak about that and then how we can leverage it. It's important that we adapt, and this we see in the history. Technology has always changed it rapidly, and we have adopted. And today's our the role exists because of digital products are more accessible and in hands of multiple people. We'll also speak a little bit about ethical consideration, and then we'll also talk about how to stay relevant and stay ahead of this curve. So many products came out there, right? The DALI came initially for creating image through text. Midjourney came, and Midjourney is getting so much better as we go, and it's just the beginning. And then there is ChatGPT came, and which was one of the most popular one. So I always approached my professional journey in the place of curiosity. How this changes in technology impact designers' role or our profession or what we do or our daily lives. So that's always been my curiosity from the childhood. I carried forward. Then I asked, like, what will be the role of a designer in the age of AI and when it's becoming an integral part of our lives every day? So just to give some context, and you all might already know it, but if you all don't know, we'll speak a little bit about ChatGPT. It's a language model. What happens, it gets a lot of trained data, and then with that massive data from the internet or the data set you feed into this model, it connects those dots and kind of gives human-like responses. Think of it as like a kid. Like the kid is like learning from whatever you teach that, and then the output of the what a kid does is based on what information you feed them and how they grow up. So AI models are similar like that. Based on what information you feed, it will kind of give an output. ChatGPT is similar. So you all might use ChatGPT. It's like a text based interaction through a simple user interface, right? So you feel like you're talking to a person, but it's not a person. So these are language learning models. They learn from the large set of data and gives human right responses. ChatGPT reached 1 million users just in 1 week. This was the history in making. This never happened in the entire digital product space to get that much of user acquisition in 1 week. It's free and you can go and try it. Recently, they even launched the iOS app also. And I'm not affiliated with ChatGPT, but we are just using this as a way to understand our roles and workflows and how it impacts and leverage it. And these are solely my personal experiments and explorations. So that's the question I started with, and that's what we are answering end of this presentation is how AI impact our roles and workflow. So as designers, there are 4 or 5 pillars or sections we work into, right? One is design and strategy, user research, user interface design, design system, front end development, and design management operations. I mean, I can map up a huge map of what we do, but these are some of the summarized versions. And then I ask, like, how does it apply here? How does it apply in research? How does it apply in interface design? How does it apply in front end development? So we'll start with the research. So I took one of my past research. So this is where I was doing research in healthcare and VR education and everything. So that's where this was my 1 year long project I was working during my master's program. This was like 2, 3 years back, but and then I took that user interviews. Again, this was for educational purpose, not commercialization. So there was a lot of information, right? When I was doing the research, I had to go through everything one by one to understand what the problem is here. It gets very tedious and monotonous, right? And so what I took is I took this huge, information. This were like the conversations and recordings that was done, and I asked. This was an experiment. Okay, I have come to a conclusion of what problem is. Let me see if the AI also can come to the similar conclusion. So I asked the ChatGPT, and it was able to extract. I asked like, what are the pain points here? What are the pain points users are facing? And it gave me a long answer as like, can we make it short and give me two insights? And it was able to uh, analyze and synthesize the data and give you like the final what the main problem is: difficulty in understanding the curriculum, limited participation in the classes. So but sometimes AI goes into this mode of hallucination, so it kind of gives like random answers. So it's very important you kind of use this um, in a way that you are control of the judgments, and not let it not take that as a judgment, because it kind of can do mistakes, and that human judgment is very essential: your intuition, cultural understanding, and everything. But it was able to synthesize data and give me research insights, which I was able to, evaluate with, or the problem statement I defined, and then the problem it identifying, and it was actually matching. Those were the major pain points. So you as a researcher, again, even Sam Altman in one of this recent talk, he said that it can do a task, but not a job as a whole. So if in certain task part of your work where it is monotonous, or you need something to brainstorm it, this kind of language learning models are very efficient for you to synthesize information and everything. Again, that judgment needs to be with human, but you can use this as a way of brainstorming and like what do you say? It's not way of making a decision in research, but it's more of building confidence in the what do you say decisions. And there are like data biases and everything, which we'll talk a little bit on the ethics side of design. So this can help you synthesize large information to draw insights and complex data set, maybe one like categorizing of data points and pain points, like how we do affinity clustering, right? Grouping things into information. We could use language learning models to have that synthesizing of research. So that one of the use case I identified. Then I asked, can we create user flow through ChatGPT? Right? It's a language model. We don't see any flows. It's just a text. But then I asked, like, hey, can you write a user flow for um, a subscription-based application? And then it was able to give me the flow, like first screen this, second screen there, and all that stuff. And this, again, user flow is very contextual. There are so many flows out there, you can't just take and apply. But then it helps you think about certain use cases that you never thought of. And it's like a brainstorming mechanism, even for generating user flow. Then one good thing about language learning models like this is it understands the previous context. For example, here, I've asked that give me the user flow for a subscription. And after that, I'm asking, what's the add $5 subscription to it? So it's able to blend those two things together and able to give you another user flow. And that you can't find Google it, right? You can never Google it, and Google won't understand the context. Again, they have launched Bard AI, which can do similar things also. So here I was able to ask, give me a user flow for subscription. Then I asked, add $5 to it, and it added that integrated in the user flow. So I kind of took this and kind of mapped things out based on what the information ChatGPT gave me, like open the app, enter email and password, enter incorrect, and then users, like there are subscribed users, there are non-subscribed users. This is the part. So sometimes it just helps you brainstorm and explore those things, which can be very effective with your workload for you to, be efficient and everything. Again, user flows are very contextual. I work in fintechs where that's the most simplest user flow has a lot of other products and other revenue KPIs and metrics and everything attached to it. So we can't just take generic, but then this can help you, brainstorm. And maybe, so let's say you got like a client who want to make a e-commerce app or something like that, and you can just like ask. Those are like sometimes the patterns are standard, and people have understood and adapted to this product side. Like a login flow can be pretty standard. But again, it's very contextual. But then you can use that as a way to brainstorm, and sometimes you identify certain flows that you are not thought of. Then I start exploring like how you can use that in like content space also. um, so that's where we see a lot of designers, and even I have done it so many times, put lorem ipsum on your app, like, right, because hey, that's a UX writer's work, not my work. But you might think that, but then it doesn't give the context to your UI if there's no messaging in there. So we might not be user writers, there are dedicated writers who do that, but sometimes when you don't have that luxury to have that, you can always generate this kind of a text to put it in there, and the best thing about, you might ask, okay, John, I can go to Google and get that text, why that is a big deal? But like when you design a UI, right, sometimes you have a word limit and a character count limit. Then you have to manually go and like edit it and all that stuff. But here, what we are doing is like, I think, give me a Mediterranean food salad description and just make it 150 words or 200 words, right? And if you don't have like the auto layout and stuff, um, it's important that sometimes you kind of constrain the text also. So you can ask and like kind of customize the text, word size, length size, and everything using AI models. And now plugins are coming, and I'm actually here in San Francisco today to attend the Figma's conference, and I've seen that a lot of like AI enabled plugins are being integral part of the tool. So now we might be using ChatGPT and everything, but I think going forward, all this will start integrating in the existing products. Even like the recent Apple launch, right? They had the keyboard, which had the transformer model. That's what they called it, and which is basically it's correcting a sentence. It's helping complete a sentence. Now we had autocorrect for words. Now this can help the sentence. So it's getting integrated in part of our existing products. Then it can also help you in terms of language translation, and with that, making sure it's accessible for people with different language and everything. Like for example, I know English, I know five other language, but then I don't know Spanish, right? And if I want to translate my website, right, like let's say you want to make it for a community that understands Spanish and everything. So yeah, you can just ask ChatGPT to like take this language and then you translate that to Spanish, which you can put that on your website and everything. And I think moving forward, it'll probably like one click button is like for translates to five different languages, and your website will be ready for five different languages. And sometimes we don't invest in accessibility because it's expensive and everything, all this translation at the large scale and everything, where AI models can help you, one click of a button translation. Again, the human judgment is very essential. Right? Even uh, if a bigger company is doing a product with five different languages, they still need to have somebody understand the context, cultural understand, and that's where a designer's role come into a role, right? Like it sometimes just English translation into another language might not mean the same. It might mean different things. That so that human understanding is essential, but then you they can use this as a task to translate and then kind of be more efficient with their work. How is everyday products like integrated? How everyday products are integrated? So, this is like I told you, give example, right? On the keyboards, they're getting integrated. We are seeing like Figma, they're like plugins coming out. This is just on one example. So there's like Magician plugin, and it generates icons, images, copy, and all that stuff, right? So it's getting integrated part of our existing products. And the thing is, you sometimes, even if you're building your own product, you can also like integrate this to make it more efficient and better and everything. And you all might use Notion also. A lot of Notion fans in the design community. So Notion already have integrated their AI. So lately, I've been using Notion AI a lot, and then what you can do is you can write like design brief. You're like freelancing and everything, you people templatize these processes, but then you can also UI to also use AI to create design brief outlines and stuff like that. And again, you can put your own information, but you can use as a way of structuring things. And this like grammar correction, writing essays, poems, recruiting email, sales email. There's a whole set of tools out there for you to be more efficient and smart and what do you say, do more with less time kind of a philosophy. So it's been super helpful for me, and it's been 2 3 months I'm using it. I'm working on writing a ebook on career guidance for product designers, and it's been helping me to like sometimes just fixing the grammar or editing or anything like that. But at the end, you got to write your story, your experience, and everything. But then AI can help you, like to make it better and improve, shorten it, lengthen it, and everything. And this, like I told before, it's getting integrated part in every products we use, from video editing to note taking to typing and everything. And it's not that it just came now; it's because of the hype. It's always been there. It's a very old there, this people have done work from it from a long time, and now it's just becoming consumer, product. So that's why it's like been adapted and spoken and a lot about. Even like Netflix has always been using in the recommendation of it, and then in credit card check, ID verifications. It's always been part of it, but now it's becoming like a consumer product, and then also causing fear in people. So people are speaking about it. And we saw recently acquisitions, right? Like Microsoft acquired OpenAI, not completely, partially, and they are integrating that with their Outlook PowerPoint presentation to make the smart. What's happening here is the interfaces of the products we use. It's like adapting or learning and being more personalized to the user. That is like a huge area in user experience design of personalized user interfaces. Like it adapts to a person rather than what we design or the company wants to. Those high level personalization is very much applied in education and things like that. Yeah, sorry, I got distracted. I'll come back to this one. So Microsoft is heavily invested in that, and then Google also. The recent keynote you have seen how they have integrated with their photos, how they are integrated in like generating emails and follow-up emails and all that stuff. So companies are adapting and making the integral part of their product strategy. So it's very important as designers for us to know how it works and what are the capacity, the abilities we can leverage. Again, it shouldn't be like having a brilliant solution to the problem that don't exist. That's where the designers come into deeply understanding use cases and problems, so that you can thoughtfully integrate that in our products. Can ChatGPT code? Lately, I've been using ChatGPT as my mentor for coding, so it's been super helpful. And I did some experiments. Again, this are some experiment where sometimes micro interactions, right? It's hard to build, and we designers also struggle with coding and everything. That's not our primary role, right? But so this can help you. Like I wanted to create like a simple loader with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then I just asked it to ChatGPT, and it gave me like the code, and then I was just able to put that code pen, and it generated that loader. So if I'm able to use that, as a way to create coding snippets. And this another experiment I did where I designed the car by just asking, but you should be able to describe it like human, describe it well. I use like human interface guidelines to give me a card. So I was able to do that. And also subject understanding is very essential, because if you don't know how the fundamentally code works, we won't be able to customize and modify it. And then I also asked ChatGPT for freelancers how they can, because as a freelancer or a small business owner, they have to do a lot. Like when I'm working for a big company now, we have dedicated role. It's so much of a luxury, right? But for a freelancer, they can't do everything. So this is where like AI models can help you like, do some monotonous things like, writing an invoice, like, and also personalized names. I mean, not some people, most of us are proficient in English here. We all understand. There are like people who are not good with like writing emails and follow-ups and convincing through emails and stuff, right? So for them, this can be way to empower. They might be very skillful, but they might not be skilled in their craft, but not able to like communicate or write emails to get leads from the clients and stuff. So this is where it can help. And the good thing about ChatGPT, you can like personalize it, like write it to this person, put their name. So you can write highly personalized. It's not just a putting something you get generic and put it out there. So this can be super helpful, and writing design briefs and everything. So helps designers to be more efficient, and especially freelancers, right? They have to do a lot from business to the work to growing their business, right? It's a lot. So I think AI models can be more efficient. So I created a YouTube series of all my experiments and everything. So I put it out there. And so, that's how I actually got into this talk. I shared one of the video got popular. So I just did this experiment. So you can definitely go and watch and check it out. So it's the big question, right? Is it a threat or a friend? And everyone started freaking out, looking, oh, what's my role now? And people went into existential crisis. Our roles are shifting anyways, independent of AI or not. Technology will continue to grow. Um, but in personally, my opinion, I framed after all this experiment is like, it's not a replacement to a designer's role, a product designer or a user experience designer or a researcher. Our roles are very complex. We deal a lot with people. And then our roles are not just limited to making UI or just doing competitor research, this like specific thing. It's a role where we deal with people, understand the problem, we solving the problem. That's the core part of design for me, right? And then AI product can enable us to do that. So I don't see it as a replacement for designers, but I see it's more of augmentation of our abilities. Again, there are some people who do like certain task work, right? Those can be a danger thing, right? So it's important that we kind of move towards more a strategic role, and looking design and from a problem solving, thinking through like a service design perspective and everything. So I'm seeing like a trend, like maybe 10 years down the line, nobody can predict the future. But I feel like the craft or making of things is getting, simplified, not easier, but simplified. But where the ability to tell story, ability to conceptualize, ability to identify problem, the right problem is getting like more important as we grow. AI ethics, again, this is a whole new topic. I feel this is from my research. I've read some research from MITs and Stanford and everything. So that's where I found all these things. This needs to be told by an actual professional who works in AI ethics. But what I'm saying is solely from my reading and research. So there are like four areas that ethics needs to be highly thought of. Data biases, because it based on the culture, the data can change, right? And most of the data on the internet might be very much biased to a specific race, gender, or demographic and stuff. So it's very crucial. That's where before, while training the AI model, I was actually interning in one of the AI companies in Philadelphia. So the most part of their work was data cleaning and categorizing of data. Even if you feed that, there are like existing models by big companies have built, but that understand the data bias is very essential. And designers being empathetic and understanding people, that's where we come into a picture to think about this data critically. Transparency, like how your data is used by these companies, uh, how how is it, how are they like, making sure your data is not given out or used to sell you ads. So that building the transparency, if you build a product, is very essential. And the privacy, a lot of the companies now, we don't use ChatGPT or it's banned and stuff, right? Because like what is this important information that get leaked and things like that. So understanding and being transparent with the privacy is something that we need to consider. There are some designers who solely work on policies and design in that area also. So that's something, if you are interested, you can look into. Those become more important, but I think that falls more into the legalities and the government side of things. Then it's important to build that with responsibly, right? If we do it wrong, or the developers or engineers or creators of this AI product, we do it wrong, it can go really wrong. Even I'm coming as an optimist. There are dark side to it also. So it's important that we responsibly think, like even if it's like replacing jobs, how are we creating more jobs? What are the training given to the people? What are the resources out there for them upskill and everything? It's we have always seen in the history, new things have come, it has replaced job, and it also have created more jobs, right? But it's very important that we upskill and grow in a profession. So based on reading all this, I made this tweet that AI product that prioritize safety, moderation, inclusivity, relevance will be highly successful in the competitive market. Currently, ChatGPT, its data is limited to 2021, where the BARD AI has the relevant data and everything, right? So it's important they stay relevant, or else it's pretty not so helpful. Um, okay, so we don't have to, go about years of research. People have done all this research and shared it with us to read. So Google has a resource on what do you say, AI and human-centered AI, how to make human-centered machine learning models. So you read this case studies, educate ourselves. That's the best thing we could do. Getting into AI and development, it's like lifetime of work, right? But we might not have that time. So best thing we can do is educate ourselves and read and everything. So they have like articles on how to build it responsibly. So if you are building in an AI company, read about this guideline. See, and make like a checklist if it's met or not. Just use that as a reference, and this will help get you started from the day one. So if you see, our role is bridging the gap between, excuse me, technology and people. This technology is very complex. How do we make it accessible for people, and also how do we simplify it for people? And the fact that it, a lot of the tech approach, right, what's taken is like, okay, we have a solution now, let's just like force this on people. As designers, we need to think like, what's the problem here, and then will this solution make some sense to them? Again, in the real world, a design process is not linear. Sometimes we start with the question, or I start with the solution and go back to a problem. Sometimes we start with the problem and go to a solution. So it's important, but it's important that we are not having solution to the problem that don't exist. And then sometimes a solution might be simple. You don't have to put AI in everything. So it's important that we designers critically think and bridge that gap. But in the other side, right, like you can observe some of the pain point in the product, and also think how can AI be leveraged to solve those problems and more make it more efficient. For example, I'm on the side also doing content creation, and then while recording in the front of camera, you do a lot of like and all that stuff, right? And I have to personally edit everything. But if there's like a AI, it's still there. I forgot the name, but if our existing editing tools, I can like just remove arms, and it will just edit by itself. So that way you made a life of a user easier. So that's where our designers come into picture to thoughtfully think about this use case, research, prototype, explore, experiment, and test it before launching it. There are certain timeless skills that designers need to uh, think about. One is problem solving, and this doesn't impact by any technological shift, right? This is something that I personally follow and believe. One is problem solving, even into your product, your life, or how you approach your career. And like identifying the right problem. There always be problem in a product, right? Like how do you prioritize, identify right problem, and how do you solve it by first principle thinking, or how do you go about it? So that's very essential. When I say first principle thinking, it's just like breaking down a problem into small set and like reasoning up from there and trying to solve it. Understanding of the subject, I want to emphasize a lot on this, because if you don't have critical thinking about subject, no matter what AI model come, you can't use or know what questions to ask. Let's take an example of the code, right? If you don't know the fundamentals of the front end coding, even if it gives you all the code, you don't know how to customize and change and everything. The same happens like you see, like you put a prompt and the AI generates a UI and everything. But if you don't know the fundamentals of UI, you don't know the fundamentals of information architecture or fundamentals of usability, it's pretty useless. And there are templates out there. Why it's so different from that? So you need to understand the subject in depth. It's important that we go back to the fundamentals instead of, oh, AI will make this for us. No, like, go to your fundamentals, because that will help you critically think what's right and what's not and make those judgments. And those judgment, your critical thinking is going to be a more valuable asset moving forward. And then definitely strategic thinking, how you strategically think about stuff, how you think through systems, like a small change in UI in fintech can impact revenue and other products. How do you are strategically thinking about it? That's very essential, and that's how our roles will evolve into, at least what I'm observed. And like I said, nobody can predict the future. So I think, and then communication and storytelling, that's going to be a very essential, because if you know how to tell a story, you can create things, like, for example, if you have an animation movie idea and you are the writer of the story, then you can definitely use certain AI tool to create like the storyboard narratives and all that stuff. And communication is going to be very essential. These are some timeless skills that designers we learn, but we continue should definitely consider making integral part of our learning process. Just to conclude, so what from all my experiments and explorations, it can help you synthesize the research data. Again, the judgment remains with humor. Your critical thinking is essential, and then you can use to automate some of the research tasks, even writing a research plan. But then you decide what method and a strategy to use it. Help to generate personalized content. We have seen that brain use of flows, generate code snippets, replace monotonous and repetitive tasks, which will help us to do more in less time. So that's about it. So I can conclude from what this is like, our role is not going to go anywhere, but designers' roles are going to be more and more important because need of human factors become more into this products. And we will have to think how we can bridge this gap between technology and people through design. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, John. Are you open to taking some questions now since we have a little bit of time?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy
Okay.
to take them.
Great. So for everyone who's here, feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A part. We already have a couple in here, John. So let me go ahead and let's start
Okay.
with one. Sanjana writes, as designers, how might we use AI and other recent tech like AR, VR to contribute to extremely pressing issues like climate change?
Oh wow, that's I think one I have seen, there's a lot of problem in the place of literacy, right? AI literacy or climate change. A lot of people live in the denial of a climate change, right? It's like we might not able to solve it completely, but what we can do as designer is spread awareness and help to educate them. For example, uh, if you want to think through an AI experience, right? How can we create an AI experience to educate people about this consequences of a climate change? Maybe a AR, application where you hold it in the real world and you will show how the world will look like. That creates awareness among people and helps them to visualize. So there's a extended reality can help you like visualize things strongly. Again, we shouldn't uh, just have solutions to the problem, but it's important that you approach this a mind of experiment and exploration. So I feel like the answer for it is creating awareness and use technology to tell better stories. We are and AI has the ability to tell strong stories through audio, visuals, and everything. So that's how designers can be part and kind of leverage that to solve some of the problems to solve which are pressing problems through creating awareness and literacy. Yeah.
Great. There's another question in here from Trey. You give an example of language translation and provide Spanish as a recommendation. Have you tested out the reliability of translations to languages that you do know?
Can you just summarize
Um,
that?
so just to see like if you know, like if you
Okay.
didn't know Spanish, right? You're not
Yeah,
necessarily
yeah,
knowing if it kind of like Google,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
So what are your thoughts on that?
yeah, yeah. That's why I think I clearly made a point that it's important that human judgment is important. So even if you're translating, if I don't know it, I it's I'm not the right person to kind of give a final decision on it, so that human factor remains essential. And then like I said that they like somebody who understands Spanish and you are like translating, they can leverage this, right? Like now let's say for one UI, but like I said, that person with subject understanding is very essential. And now they have one screen, right? What if they have 100 different screens, and then if they have to translate everything, so that at the end the judgment remains with them. That I personally, I don't understand Spanish, so I was not able to make a decision, but my girlfriend was able, she knows Spanish, she was able to make a decision. So you can test that with the actual people, and then subject matter experts and things like that, right? And design is a collaborative work, so you have to work with people who have that subject understanding. So I think that human understanding and critical thing is essential. So that's how I use it. And if you are not an expert at it, collaborate with people who are expert at it. Yeah.
Yeah, so another question came up about what is the role of translators and interpreters in the future now that we have tools like this? This is from I reworded Tanya's question, so it's not exactly what was said, but
Yeah.
what are your thoughts about the future of interpreters and translators now that we have this technology?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely certain little concerns, right? Where this can help, and what can happen, it can reduce the number of people employed in that area, and people who make like judgments and decision might be more important rather than who are doing like implementation and production kind of a work, right? So that area can be a little challenging and can replace that jobs, right? So what I'm saying is like that can happen. People who are into solely implementation might be impacted. So it's important that they kind of upskill and build those critical thinking skills and that subject matter understanding. So you kind of move into a space where you are paid for being having that critical thinking or that judgment, right? So that's you kind of have to adapt and move to that level to be stay relevant. So if even it like let's say now UI designers, like people, if you just know to make UI designers, nobody's gonna hire you, right? They hire you for everything that comes along with it. So that we have seen anyways in our profession too. Right now, people want case studies, people are how you solve the problem, your critical thinking. So even with translation, if you're like solely taking input and producing an output, your job definitely might be concerning. That can cause replacement, and that's where I think governments and everything comes into picture, because they need to see if like 100,000 people who are doing like slowly implementing translation work, if they become unemployed, how do they create more different opportunity for them? So this is where the policies and government things comes into picture to take that category of people who have lost job for AI to upskill and help them to stay relevant. So that's how I see it. So if you are in a space where you are strategically and that critical thinking is what valued for you, and that's where you as a translator become more valuable than if you are just on the implementation and the production side where that could be easily automated by AI. Yeah,
That's really
it's scary,
interesting.
but yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and just thinking about the upskilling and the need for government to keep up. I actually heard a presentation yesterday from one of the division directors from the Texas Workforce Commission, and
Mm,
honestly, it seems like they are staying cutting edge, but I'm not even sure that these technologies are quite yet on their radar for having to
mhm,
upskill people too, because I don't even see product design or UX design on the list of like apprenticeships that they're like
mhm.
supporting. It's all like website design, which feels like an old term that we used to use. So it's really
Yeah.
it's really interesting that you talk about the need to upskill and how governments need to support. And I would be interested to know if this is on their radar at all for that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a long. I think it's probably 10 years, 20 years, right? Even if this adapt, it takes time to even be replaced. That's time. That adaptation and things like that, right? But I think yeah, seen those uh, Sam Altman talk with the government. So they are working with the government to make sure they are taking actions. Usually, the regulations what they did was with AI, we're gonna like stay a bit far from it so that we don't become blocker to the innovation. Because the moment regulation come, innovation becomes slower. And working in fintech because of regulation, a project takes a long time. So, but now they have been taken steps. That's what Sam Altman has spoken to the government, and this like live stream on YouTube. You all can also watch it. They are working with the government to make sure that they're. But then, yeah, I think like coding might be on the radar. I don't think so. UX is UX. We our profession. It's people not many understand it or anything like that, right? So I think coding profession might be a radar. UX probably we have to continue fighting our battles what we are fighting today. But yeah, I think some countries are dependent on call center jobs and stuff. That's a huge audience also some countries. So those things and all can cause economical shift, which the government has to take care of. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a really interesting question from Aaron about like using AI in the fight for anti-corruption or at all. Like, where does AI fit in this? Like, can the tools help prevent and mitigate corruption in society? I mean, it's created by humans. We already have been hearing a lot of conversation around bias and potential inequality. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, this is not a AI problem at all, right? Like in it's we don't even have come to a conclusion that AI is the solution. If we I can just like assume the deeply the problem are in how the human it's a human level problem, right? And it's not necessary AI is a solution for it. We don't even have to come to a conclusion that AI can even help us with it. That problem may be solved through communication, right? It can be solved through shared understanding about things. So it's not necessary AI is a solution for everything, but then it's important to understand the root problem of the cause. Maybe the finance is the problem, or it might be the people communication is the problem. That's how I would approach thinking of AI to understand deeply a problem, and not necessarily AI can give a solution to it. And then I don't know if there will be AI policymakers who like humans can be biased, but what if there's somebody unbiased algorithm, right? That's it's OpenAI is working towards AGI. That's that general intelligence, which is very dangerous to humankind. That's where regulation is very essential. Like right now this AI are like specific tasks. These are like called narrow AI. Like for example, translation is a narrow task. Writing a poem is a narrow task. It can do narrow tasks. But we humans, we can do like multiple things. I can be doing one thing, second thing, and many things, and then we connect things together. That's general intelligence. They are working towards general intelligence. Maybe they could create an unbiased AI that helps make judgments. But then AI can, who knows, it's not manipulating us because see humans as a threat, right? There's the concepts like that. But I feel we shouldn't make AI the solution for everything. But sometimes a communication or a shared understanding might be a solution. We humans are very complex. It's a spectrum of people. It's hard to it might not be even possible by AI to understand the contextual and the cultural side of it. So AI is not the solution for everything, but it's important that we approach a problem such like people's problem through its root cause. Yeah.
I wanna touch on there was a kind of a question that was around like the sharing of the interview data with ChatGPT and the
Mhm.
ethics around like, you know, how do we ethically like use these tools to help process the
Mm,
qualitative data, are we
mm,
did you share with them that you would be sharing this? Like what are your thoughts around just kind of the ethics of sharing, like what would
mm.
be like one-to-one communication with a tool that could be holding on to it somewhere else?
Yeah. Yeah, I got that question asked a lot when I showed that slide to people. The previous one, the slide I showed, it was like I clearly mentioned educational purposes. And this people I spoke to also, I've made sure I'm gonna display it out there. I'm going to show that in my thesis presentation. I might use this, but I wouldn't be using for any commercial space. This solely for educational and experimental purpose. So this was loosely done research study, but if you are commercially doing, uh, like I doubt you even can like put your research to synthesize that data in the chat gpt. Like companies like Apple and even in major fintech, people don't use chat gpt or any language learning models because of the privacy concern. OpenAI, they had done like a business focused, what do you say, APIs and stuff, so that the data is not leaked to proprietor data is not leaked towards it. Yeah, ethically, like if it's not if you're doing commercially, I would be ask your company's legal team. But then if you are doing it like solely experimentation and exploration or educational purposes, like how I did it, that was my from my master's thesis, I would recommend to do it. But if you're doing commercially, be very very careful how you share your data. And I've taken consent, have taken consent from my interviews. I can use this for experiment and explorations, and also present this to people. So anything I told them, if you're not comfortable. So when you're doing research, it's important you take this in writing and consents and everything. So commercially, be careful. Talk to your legal team if you're doing in companies. But if you're doing for educational, or if you're part of a university or anything like that, that's completely okay. But you always have to take consent to use that data. Yeah.
Yeah, and we actually have a speaker later today that's going to be talking about like the landmines and the legalities around
Yeah.
using AI with things like that.
Yeah.
John, thank you so much. This has been an awesome way to kick off UX Frontiers and hear your perspective on AI. We really, really appreciate you.